Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. How is everyone doing? What's happening? Back again after a couple of days of break, probably from Sunday, I guess. Nice sunny day outside, kind of hot. And I've been trying to work on this kind of a presentation and a document combined for a while now, trying to collect a lot of my readings from here and there. But sort of, I'm going to expand on all of these things soon. But right now, I just want to project a few bullet points and see what you guys think about that. And inshallah, we'll expand this in a greater detail later. Today, we are going to discuss Paul of Tarsus or Saul of Tarsus and how he influenced and sort of merged and made a religion for Gentiles, where he merged Judaism and Hellenistic views and merged it into one thing. So we're going to dive deep into this and we'll see what's going on and what's up, inshallah. Gonna put an invite link. Someone wants to come and discuss. Sorry. So yeah, inshallah, I'm gonna try actually bringing in my presentation. See what happens. Hopefully, use the presentation. Okie dokie. Oh, they're not supported. Okie dokie. Live stream doesn't take keynotes. Just got to know about this. It's pretty strange. I can do other things with this. Probably take screenshots of this. Put it up for you guys. See what you guys. Let me do this. Alrighty, moving on. Let's go to our first image and see what's up. Paul of Tarsus, cutting to me a liar and a charlatan, and sort of, I would say, mixed in his beliefs of half believes and half deceives, deceiver kind of a person. We're not really sure what his intentions were. Looking back at his life, we could say, if you have read a bit, that he was also known as Saul before his conversion, and he was a Roman citizen of Jewish heritage. He came from a background that combined Jewish traditions with Roman privileges and was known to travel extensively as a tent maker by trade, in addition to his manual profession. Paul was heavily influenced by Hellenistic Greek thought and philosophy, which shaped much of his worldview. Now, although not a trained theologian by Jewish standards, I don't believe he was at all a Pharisee. And I have done a lot of research and swung my thoughts back and forth. I don't think he was a Pharisee. I don't think he was gonna be appointed or studied under someone belonging to Sanhedrin and stuff like that. He presented himself as a religious authority, blending philosophical reasoning with religious claims that would later define his version of Christianity. I don't believe none of that, but that's where the things stand as of now. Okie dokie. Now, this one's a heavy hitter, as I like to call it, with him saying multiple things which go against a lot of things which a normal person would believe, say, want, and need or do. So, first of which is Paul's claim to apostolic connection. Paul often emphasized that he had met leading figures among Jesus's original followers, specifically James and Peter. However, critics argue that these claims served a strategic purpose. By associating himself with respected disciples, Paul sought to enhance his legitimacy, I would say, and authority among early Christian communities, many of whom were skeptical of his teachings. And these communities were still aligned with the Jerusalem based followers of Jesus, led by James. That's what I believe, Jesus' brother, who viewed Paul's reinterpretation of Jesus' message with suspicion. By asserting ties to these key apostles, what Paul did was he attempted to silence opposition and validate his independent theology. In a nutshell, and Paul's reinterpretation of the Messiah goes hand in hand with this, where in Paul's teaching, the Jewish concept of Messiah was dramatically redefined. Instead of a purely human leader expected to restore justice and deliver Israel, Paul transformed the Messiah into a divine, semi pagan figure, a dying and rising man God who offered spiritual salvation through his sacrificial death. And this view bore similarities to Greco Roman mystery religions, which featured deities that died and resurrected. More importantly, Paul never personally encountered Jesus during his lifetime and showed little concern for Jesus' actual moral teachings or prophetic mission, which is why we Muslims don't like Paul. And we think that and everything Jesus told about Islam, Paul basically not only just diluted them or mixed them or made them dirty, he replaced them totally for and brought up a religion for Gentiles where they could be included and felt like Jews and without even following the law. And Paul, not only showing little concern to Jesus's actual teachings or prophetic mission, rather he focused on the life and message of the historical Jesus. Paul built a theology centered almost entirely on Jesus' death and its mystical implication for salvation. And there are multiple things. We're gonna go to Bible, we're gonna go to epistles, and we're gonna discuss what's being told and how it's being told. So yeah, that was his background, his apostolic connection, him redefining Messiah. Uh, second here. Where is the crucifixion? So this one's gonna require a lot of explanation, where Paul's doubts about original disciples' views were pretty evident, and his emphasis on crucifixion is what we're gonna discuss. His doubts on the disciples' beliefs and his influence on the gospel, as I like to coin it. That's what I think, and that's what it is. Let's see what we can start with. I had some of my notes handy, can't find them, but yeah. So there remains a considerable historical uncertainty regarding what Jesus' original disciples, those who actually lived and traveled with him, believed about the crucifixion. Some scholars argue that there is no strong evidence that these disciples taught or even accepted that Jesus was crucified, suggesting the possibility that the crucifixion narrative developed later outside of their direct testimony. In fact, there are compelling reasons to think the earliest followers may not have believed Jesus died on a Roman cross, a belief that would later be asserted more forcefully by others like Paul, who never met Jesus during his lifetime. Now, obviously, these scholars uh, have different views. Some of them do not align with Islam, but I'm not talking in regards to what Islam says. And obviously, me being a Muslim, I believe 100% in Quran and prophetic Sahih narrations and Sunnah. However, I want to tell you honestly what non-Muslim world thinks about Paul. So he had doubts about original disciples' beliefs, and his unique emphasis on crucifixion is something which is, uh, I think he was obsessed with it. He wanted to make a name out of himself and make some money off of it. It's more of like a snake oil salesman. He just wanted to feel important because he was being rejected from all over the place by society of religious and non-religious figures. So he stands out as the earliest known figure who emphatically proclaimed that Jesus was crucified and that this crucifixion was central to his role as a Messiah. What makes this significant is that Paul didn't present this claim based on eyewitness experience or historical certainty, but rather as a theological conviction. Now, his insistence on Jesus' sacrificial death served as a cornerstone of the salvation narrative he was constructing, I believe, one where faith in Jesus' death and resurrection became the means of redemption, rather than obedience to Jewish law or ethical teaching of Jesus himself. Now, these are some of the blatant points which modern day Christians reject, and they just sometimes they follow church, and others who don't follow church, they just do not care about what's going on in their lives, so to speak. uh, and they just want to be like, God, mercy, love, this, that, I can do whatever I want. Jesus died for my sin. Now, the influence of Pauline thought on the gospel is what I believe is the major thing. The canonical gospel writers, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, were not among Jesus's original disciples. Instead, they were heavily influenced by Pauline theology. And their portrayal of Jesus' life, death, and resurrection reflects the core themes of Paul's teachings that Jesus' crucifixion served as a divine sacrifice for humanity's sin, and that he experienced a resurrection of some kind. This theological framework, sort of shaped after Jesus' time, became the dominant narrative in Christian doctrine, even though it may not have originated with Jesus himself or his earliest Jewish followers. And we have to keep this in mind, guys, that all of the Paul's epistles, more or less, were written before the Gospel of Mark, which was written somewhere around 65 to 70 80. The temples mentioned and stuff like that. Anyways, that's a topic for some other day. However, I want to show you something. If you guys just open the Gospel of Mark, any version, and you see the John the Baptist where he's preparing the way, and he's basically baptizing people who are coming to confess their sins, uh, you know, the question you can ask is, were their sins forgiven? And this is always a bummer for Christians. I can see their, thoughts running in their head. Gospel of Mark. One second, guys. So yeah, this is a question which Christians mostly can't answer, if people who John was baptizing, were their sins forgiven or not. Uh, all That's what I strongly believe, and I think because of all of Paul's epistles, he kind of heavily influenced all of the following gospel writers from 70 to 80 to 85 to 90 to 95 to 100, whatever dating you want to take for all the four gospels. That's what he did in a nutshell. Okay, moving on to the other two things. So this was Paul's worldview. He actually thought that the world is gonna end soon after Daniel, since everything's being fulfilled, and he saw Jesus, and he said that yeah, if Jesus died and resurrected, in his view, the world's gonna end very soon, and he talked about. His teachings kind of predicted that apocalyptic worldview interpretation of Daniel 9, and he kind of mixed a Jewish martyrdom versus, his own Pauline crucifixion. So when you look into let's say his worldview, we're talking about Paul of Tarsus, a man deeply immersed in apocalyptic thinking, who shaped the radical idea of crucified Messiah. He firmly believed that the world was on the brink of divine judgment and that history was about to end dramatically. This belief heavily influenced how he framed Jesus' role in human salvation. Paul's urgency and conviction about the end times colored much of his theology, even though historically his predictions about the imminent end of the world did not materialize. Now, his interpretation of Daniel 9, Paul and others who followed him drew inspiration from Jewish scriptures. Daniel 9, which includes like a cryptic phrase, a Messiah will be cut off. While the original text of this passage is debated among scholars, Paul likely interpreted this to mean that the Messiah was destined to suffer or be killed. And he used such verses to retroactively justify the crucifixion of Jesus, making it appear as though Jewish prophecy had predicted it all along, which is not the case. And there are also Jews who think that their Messiah will be born of a father. So Jesus kind of a human father, so to speak. So Jesus kind of, falls off the grid for that. Now, with Jewish martyrdom versus, Pauline Messiah, long before Christianity, Jewish people thought that, they had the space for the concepts of martyrs, righteous individuals who might die for their people or faith. A messianic figure dying for the sake of national redemption wasn't completely foreign in first century Judaism. However, this concept was generally understood in political or spiritual terms, not in the form of divine man God dying to remove the sins of humanity. Paul took the martyr motive to an entirely new theological level. Let's continue this. I think I had a couple of points more. We do talk about the redefinition of Messiah. Sorry. Other than this, if you guys go to Galatians 2, verses 11 to 13, you'll find another confrontation of Paul and Peter, where, it says that I'm going to go to New Living Translation just for the easiness of it. It says, but when Peter came to Antioch, I had to oppose him to his face, for what he did was very wrong. So this is Paul confronting Peter. When he first arrived, he ate with the Gentile believers who were not circumcised, but afterwards, when some friends of James came, Peter would not eat with the Gentiles anymore. He was afraid of criticism from these people who insisted on the necessity of circumcision. As a result, other Jewish believers followed Peter's hypocrisy, and even Barnabas was led astray by their hypocrisy. So it requires a lot of balls, I would say, to call someone a hypocrite who lived with Jesus. And, I'm just going to share this for the sake of it. There it is, guys. I hope you guys can read it now. So it says, but when Peter came to Antioch, I had to oppose him to his face, for what he did was very wrong. When he first arrived, he ate with the Gentile believers who were not circumcised, but afterwards, when some friends of James came, Peter wouldn't eat with the Gentiles anymore. He was afraid of criticism from these people who insisted on the necessity of circumcision. As a result, other Jewish believers followed Peter's hypocrisy, and even Barnabas was led astray by their hypocrisy. So basically, he's blaming Peter for following the teachings of Jesus, keeping the law, circumcision, and stuff like that. And when Peter did not want to be seen or portrayed and being informed on to James by people with James sent, James being the ultimate authority and being in Jerusalem and continuing with Jesus's ministry, he's saying that just because what I was doing and trying to gather up the numbers, well, just a second, guys. Peter basically gave up on me. Otherwise, we would have teamed up and did something against James. So all of these things are a record of Paul's deception, how he made up a religion which was not what Jesus taught, which was not Jesus's aim and goal in his worldly life when he was here. And yeah, there's going to be a second coming, and that's going to be to correct all the Christians who were led astray by Paul. So we're going to end this now, guys, inshallah. And I'm going to expand on each of these points. I have made a lot of notes, and we're going to talk about that, inshallah, subhanahu wa ta'ala. Take good care of yourself. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.